This wilderness is a really rugged place, but the valleys are steep, it's cold, it's wet, there are leeches everywhere, it's a very difficult terrain. Some places it's just hard to stand up.
Coast of Tassie, it rains 365 days a year. I'm almost fairly certain of it.
The West Coast is probably the most amazing bit of ground you've ever seen. You'll go from button grass plains to heavy forest to nothing. Rivers, it's a lovely area.
Buried deep within the remote wilderness of Tasmania is a place called Savage River. Located on the west coast, the area is rugged and untamed, renowned for its wilderness and natural beauty. But within this isolated green landscape, there lies a rich secret of another kind.
It is a rare magnetite deposit, that's for sure. The actual ore itself, as a magnetite goes, is a bit of an anomaly because it's very high grade.
Back a few years ago when I first started here, there was a bit of a bet between a couple of blokes about whether or not they could weld the two rocks together of high-grade ore.
They could pull these rocks out of the ground and pretty much weld them immediately. They were that high content of iron ore. Other operations within Australia are probably working with anywhere from 30 to 35%. Our high grade we pull out of the ground can be anywhere from 60 to 70 to over 70%. Something the Chinese call lodestone, which is very, very highly magnetic.
I think it was about $200 or $300 on the bet, and they got the old electrode out and joined the two rocks together. So that shows how good the grade is in some of the high-grade rock here at Savage River.
Welcome to Grange Resources' Savage River Mine, Tasmania's largest iron ore mine.
We take a rock like this and turn it into pellets like these that goes into the production of steel.
Steel. It's one of Earth's great commodities, used in almost everything that's manufactured in the world today. And to make it, you need iron. Iron ore refers to any rock containing metallic iron. It's the most common element by mass, forming Earth. Harder than most other metals, iron replaced bronze as the metal of choice for making weapons and household items. It was then discovered that when combined with carbon, it became even harder. Thus, steel was born. Some reserves of iron ore have now been depleted, but on the west coast of Tasmania, it's one of our best kept secrets.
It is the biggest open cut mine in Tasmania. We have the biggest dump trucks in Tasmania. We mine 15 million tonnes of dirt out of the ground, 5.5 to 6 million of that is ore. It's significant. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It doesn't stop. It's a big business.
We are probably one of the largest pellet makers in Australia.
Our company is a big industry.
Equipment here in Tassie is obviously the biggest we have here in the state, and even Victoria.
Big boys' toys, where you get to drive them around and thumping loud engines roaring as you're driving up the road.
We budget for around about 2.5 million tonne a year. That's in pellet form, loading onto ships. But yeah, it's quite a big dollar.
We turn over well over 200 million a year.
All the consumables that we use all come from local businesses. So I mean, for the Tasmanian economy, you know, it's a huge thing.
Grange Resources employ anywhere from 600 to 700 people. It is a big business in the region. It means a lot to a lot of people and injects a lot of money into communities.
The Savage River Mine is a story that overcame adversity in one of the toughest places on Earth, Tasmania's west coast. A harsh environment, the pioneers were an incredibly tough breed.
Back in 1887, a government department did some exploration here, and a guy called Charles Sprent first discovered this iron ore deposit at Savage River. This wilderness is really rugged, and those early explorers back in the 18 and 1900s did an amazing job to survive out here.
Tasmania has a rich mining heritage, dating back to the late 1800s.
In about 1920, they determined that this was going to be an economic deposit of iron ore. It wasn't till the 60s that it was first drilled, and the exploration happened then when they drilled out the ore body and defined where the magnetite was.
They knew it was close to the surface, but because of the hostile environment between there and anywhere else, shipping-wise, and they couldn't really do much with it.
It was pristine country. It was, no one had been there before, really, other than passing through.
An entrepreneur, Roy Hudson, took an interest in it, and in the 60s convinced an American and a Japanese conglomerate to come in and have a crack at mining the ore there.
And the only access to it was by horse, and the men walked in this little track and fell some timber to make a drill site, and they took the drill components in with a helicopter, and the drillers camped in there in tents, and we used to pack food into them or on a pack horse every week.
The climate was very harsh. We had to learn to work outdoors in the rain. I could reliably predict that it would rain 6 days out of 7 every week.
A lot of the old people said when it wasn't raining, it was dripping off the trees, and that's when it wasn't snowing.
So you just had to work in the rain. You had to work out how to do it, and that involved beach umbrellas on sticks.
If we could go back in time, the only day you'd want to be there is a Sunday, because they used to go to church on Sunday, it didn't work, or probably Christmas Day. Any other time you wouldn't want to be near the place. that's unless you really like work.
In October 67, they pumped the first ore from Savage, so 2.5 years from conception, they had it up and running.
Nowadays, although working conditions have changed slightly, the process of extracting the metallic iron ore from the ground and exporting it to the world is essentially the same.
The process of mining is along the lines of we come in, we do exploration, then we jump through. Once we start, that's all proven up, we go straight into drilling holes, loading holes with explosives, blowing those holes up. Then we come in with the big excavation equipment, mine it out, take it out and put it into waste dumps or into our crusher to send it up to the concentrator.
So, having been drilled, blasted, moved and crushed, the high-grade ore travels via conveyor 1.6 kilometres uphill to the concentrator. Here it's separated using magnets, crushed again, and mixed with water. The liquid iron ore slurry is then pumped 86 kilometres to a processing plant at Port Latta, where it's dried, made into pellets, and loaded onto ships for the rest of the world.
The drill and blast guys get pretty excited about what they do, and justly so.
Well, the blast team are a tough bunch of guys, and they act that way as well. They don't let anyone boss them around, including me.
Load holes and tie up explosives, and I guess the result at the end of the day is pretty fulfilling. It's a very visual outcome, very loud, noisy outcome. Yeah, they get a bit excited about what they do.
Now that's how you blow the dirt up.
There's nothing like standing there and watching a blast go off and seeing a week's worth of work go off and be destroyed within a matter of less than a second.
Leading the drill and blast team is John Crockett. It's his job to make sure there's a constant supply of rock for the mill.
These boys are at the blunt end, you know. If they don't do their job right, nothing else sort of works. The priorities are drilling, blasting and then digging. That's an afterthought, you know. Without those two, you don't have a mine.
It's a serious task, so a sense of humour is essential for survival.
Come on, have a go, would you? Look, it takes 4 and load a hole. Back in my day, it'd take 1.
John has been around the business for quite some time. Very outspoken, cheeky young man.
About 4 and then he's over it.
I'm concrete each morning. Helps me harden up. Blasting is a bit like sex. You spend, sort of a week planning for it and organising it, and then it's sort of over in about 3 to 5 seconds.
He's done fairly well in a short amount of time. Very proactive, very outspoken, as I said. Calls a spade a shovel and hits you with it, I guess.
Today in stage 1, we're going to get that 2011 shot off at 1 o'clock. We need to get this shot to get the ore up the belt. It's as simple as that.
Today is particularly stressful. A drill rig's been offline for 6 hours, a major setback for operations. At up to $1 million a day, delays can become costly.
So right there, 6 hours drill for stair and air issues. 6 hours.
Over a 24-hour period, a grid of 50 holes are drilled to a depth of 16 metres. These are then pumped full of liquid explosive. The resulting area is a minefield the size of 2 tennis courts. This will be detonated at 1 p.m. today.
It's going to give us about 37,000 cubes of broken stocks. So we really need to get that one off. We can't afford to delay this any longer.
Meanwhile, out on the Pacific Ocean, a ship known as the Atalanta is sailing from China all the way to Port Latta on the north coast of Tasmania. Still 2 days away, crew prepare for its arrival. A ship like this arrives almost every 2 weeks to haul away the precious iron ore pellets. This is Port Latta. Its pelletizing plant turns the iron ore slurry into pellets, ready for loading on the ship.
I started here in '73. They told me I wouldn't be here long because the place wouldn't go that long. I'm still here. You can go back and you'll find people that their father worked here, and now probably their grandson works here, that type of thing. Yeah, it's a family business.
This is Port Latta. We receive the concentrate or slurry from Savage River. Basically it's dried, boiled, and we cook it, if you like, using a furnace.
It's magnetite, which is a lower grade material, which is brought to a high grade, and to bring it together, you've got to form it into a solid lump. So we make a pellet, which gives you a high grade pellet. It's also a very good blast feed. The air can circulate around the pellet.
And we are probably one of the largest pellet makers in Australia. What happens is that to make steel you need to, it's a little bit like baking a cake. You need to mix a variation of ores together with the various impurities so that you actually end up producing the right specification of steel. Our particular pellets here at Grange are of high quality and are considered by the steel makers as being very valuable in the process of steel making.
The slurry arrives from Savage. We basically thicken it and then dry it. The concentrate has some bentonite added to it. It's rolled into balls, into the furnace for 4 or 5 hours, and out the bottom is a pellet.
Most iron ore is brown. You see red dust. This is a nice black shiny mineral, magnetite. It's sitting in some very sheared up other rocks, which are due to a major fault zone that runs down here.
We're in a really rich mineralised zone here in northwest Tasmania. There's a band that runs to the northwest coast straight through this corner of Tasmania called the Arthur Mobile Belt, and there's lots of rich mines all over this area, and this particular concentration of magnetite is world class. It's between 50 and 150 metres wide. It's a semi-continuous string of magnetite deposits that are about 30 kilometres along, and the Savage River part is about 6 k's. So in that, we're mining deposits of that range of 40 to 150 metres wide, but we've got drill holes that intersect the ore at about 650 metres below sea level, and we still see this 150 metre wide ore zone. So we haven't found the bottom of it yet.
A 3600 Hitachi excavator, weighs 360 tonne. Climb up on these benches, make sure she's fairly stable, it's fairly dangerous as you can see. Been doing it for about the last 5 or 6 years. Oh, a few million tonne of dirt underneath me. So yeah, we'll get into it.
This is Greg Ling. He's in charge of all mining equipment on site. Drills, trucks, excavators and dozers. It's a critical role, making sure everything is working properly and constantly.
We've got nearly 60 pieces of mining equipment, heavy equipment. We've got about 90 light vehicles that we look after. The Hitachi excavator's 360 tonne, the trucks are 300 tonne. There's just nothing like it anywhere. They're a big truck, but I mean we have people coming out of hairdressing positions and accountants that come and drive these things, and they pick it up after a couple of weeks of training, and they're hauling 200 tonnes of ore down the road.
Nicole Eagling used to be a hairdresser. She now drives dump trucks for a living. And after a year in the mine, she still enjoys the thrill.
It's when I tell people, when they ask what I do for a living, it's when I tell them then that I realise that it's probably a big achievement more than anything. Always wanted to drive a truck, and ever since I've been in one, I couldn't think of anything else that I'd want to do. I was hairdressing for 6 years before I came down here, and I ended up doing a bit of cleaning up the top, and they sent me down here to do a cleaning job, and I seen how big the trucks were and said I wanted to have a go in one of them, so I kept applying until I did. This truck that's behind us is a 789. It can cart up to 200 tonne.
These 789s, they're approximately $2.5 to $3 million. Components can vary from an engine of $200 to $30,000. Tyres alone are $30,000 each, and we run six on one truck. So yeah, the dollars are right up there. Expensive truck to run.
It just adapts to you like driving a normal car. You remember how big the truck is and the width of it, and you just carry on like any other normal day-to-day driver.
The biggest in the state. They're a 200-tonne payload, so 300 tonne all up, and they sort of do a maximum speed of 42 kilometres an hour.
There's a number of women that work for us down there in the mine. There is a perception that women are machine-friendly or a lot easier on the equipment.
I try and be as gentle as I can.
But I can tell you from experience they're just as tough as any of the male operators.
Being a bloke, I guess I'd have to say that the blokes are a better driver, but the women definitely know how to look after the machinery a little bit better.
I don't think that women are easier on the gear. I think they're both pretty much the same.
Some of our shovel operators are women, and they won't think twice about bashing a rock out of the way. I don't think they're any easier on the gear, to be honest.
I wanted to have a go, and I've got in, and I love it, and I wouldn't leave it for the world.
The blast site's almost ready to be detonated. It's now up to John Crockett to make sure the operation runs smoothly.
The boys, they'll start clearing the area of all personnel and equipment. They'll move the equipment to a safe distance. They'll then put blast guards in position and start chasing everyone out of the area. Once it's clear, they'll start doing their radio calls to announce the blast is going to be in progress. And then they'll ask for radio silence, do a bit of a countdown from 5, and then they'll press the buttons and away she'll go.
The blast team do follow procedure to the nth degree, and each one of them has got a character of their own. They like to get you dirty. They like to make you sweat a bit. You think they're not going to get a blast off, but they do manage to do it at the last moment.
The blast team arrives at their vantage point about 800 metres from the blast zone. Things are about to get messy.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
It's 1 p.m. The charges are in place. It's time to blast.
Okay, so we'll blast this one, and the geotechs shut the pit for us for a couple of hours, and they'll monitor their radars, and we'll see if the walls are starting to move and if everything's safe.
5, 4, Fire.
We have 3 radars which we set up around the pit. These can read rock movements to 0.1 of a millimeter from 1,000 meters away. So my geotechnical engineers, they read these radar images.
Basically look at any movement that the radar might be picking up along our pit wall. They shoot out the radar beam, which reflects off the rock surface, comes back and gives us a time and distance measurement. If the measurement's different from its previous measurement, it'll depict that it's movement and send the information back to us, and we can pick up the slightest movements.
Calculate whether or not the wall's moving too quickly, and if it is, we get alarms and we pull people out from underneath there to ensure the safety of the people.
Once the geotechs have deemed it as safe as possible, they'll open the pit to production. Production will come in, sort of dig the heave off, which is all the broken rock on top of the shot, and then start mining it.
It's crushed in the primary crusher, which is in the pit, about 1.5 kilometres from the concentrator. It is then transported by overland conveyor to a stacking conveyor. It's taken from there into the 2 32-foot autogenous mills, where it is ground.
We then run it over magnetic separation, and we crush it and grind it, take it down in size, and then we can just separate it off with magnets because it's a really highly magnetic ore.
Basically from there, it's a separation process of good product, if you like, from waste or gang.
So we're not using all those nasty chemicals that some other processes have to use to float off the mineral.
"80-odd kilometres north, back at the port, the ship has finally arrived.
Well, we're on our way out to pick up the Atalanta, and she's coming in here. She seems to be right on time, and we're going to load about 80,000 tonnes of pellets on it. This ship is what they call a Panamax, and it's the biggest size that can go through the Panama Canal.
Bob Close has been a marine pilot for decades. Tonight, it's his job to bring the Atalanta into berth. It may look like a simple task, but he knows that slow and steady wins the race.
Once I get on board, the captain and I will have an exchange of information, and once we've done that, I'll proceed in. I'll tell him exactly what I'm going to do, because I take over from the captain, and he's still in command, but I just get control of the ship. Coming in, we have to be watching things all the time. The ship is going to my directions, but the captain can take over at any time if he feels it's necessary.
We're given a certain amount of time or a laycan period for the ships to arrive. We can't control the weather. It's weather dependent all the time. We're sheltered somewhat by the nut fairly well from the western side. Strong easterly winds are our biggest issue for berthing, I guess.
Here, the conditions have got to be right for us to bring the ship in. For instance, we won't bring it in if we've got 30 knots easterly. The pilot is required to be on board all times because the weather can change very quickly here and we might have to take the ship off the berth. And that's happened on many occasions.
Line boats head out, they'll have a crew, one line boat will take a pilot and he'll bring the ship in. The two line boats will come either side, there'll be a tug there to assist any pushing.
We're on one of the line boats and we've just tied the line off to buoy number 4. Our line comes from the stern of the ship to this buoy and this line will hold the ship out from the structure. The pilot will give us an instruction in a minute to tell us which lines to go next, and when we get that instruction we'll go and do that.
And they'll anchor just off the end of the jetty and tie off to the big buoys. The ship actually floats. It doesn't tie up solid, it just sits there and the ship loaders go in and out. And they'll move over the hatches and feed the ship.
The next critical part of the process is the pipeline. Constructed in 1967, it pumps the iron ore slurry 86 kilometres from the Savage River rainforest to the Port Latta pelletizing plant on Tasmania's northwest coast.
We've got a pipeline that takes our product from here down the west coast of Tasmania, 86 kilometres up to the northwest coast at Port Latta.
A lot of people, they hear about a pipeline pumping thousands of tonnes of slurry from one place to another. Imagine about a metre round pipe like you see for the hydro, but ours is a tiny pipe. It's only 9 inches in diameter, internal.
It takes 13 hours for a trip, if you like. So 1 tonne of slurry put in at the Savage River end takes 13 hours to get to the Port Latta end. It's pumped from here to an elevation of about 450 metres above sea level, which is 13 kilometres from Savage River, and then gravity fed approximately 72 kilometres to Port Latta.
The construction of this pipeline was a massive task, no doubt about it. We've experienced that by just some minor works we've had to do on the pipeline.
The reason they chose the pipe is because the vegetation and mountains and whatever between here and Savage, it's that tough to get a good road through that you wouldn't be able to put a direct line through Port Latta.
Lots of stories about the project when they were putting it in of Navajo Indians working because of the heights. At work like this, they will climb up on the strops and strays without any thought. I mean, they would have worked in safety harnesses, but still the thought of working on that is it's pretty intimidating and scary thought. So they brought these guys out because, basically they had no fear of heights.
The suspended span is a huge 300 metres across and hangs 150 metres above the Savage River.
Quite a feat of engineering for the mid-60s, as you can see. It was at some point the largest suspension bridge structure in the Southern Hemisphere for quite some time.
We're in a special place here, and we really see ourselves as stewards of this beautiful environment. The pipeline is something unique for us. It means that our footprint of being able to get our product from this remote location out to the coast is very minimal.
The pipeline is probably the only reason that this company still exists, because down in the mine we spend probably $4 million or over $4 million on diesel just to cart from the mine to the crusher. If we had to cover the cost of diesel from here to Savage River, it'd be astronomical. I couldn't imagine.
If we had to look at a different way to get that concentrate out to the port, and we were using trucks, it'd be 8 B-doubles per hour, and we'd need to have a fleet of 64 of them to run continuously around the clock to match the capacity of the pipeline.
That's 8 trucks with 2 trailers each full of iron ore, leaving the mine every hour of every day of the year. The cost and environmental impact of such a trucking operation would simply not be viable.
Because of the magnetics and the density of the slurry and the pressure we pump at, most of the velocity is through the centre of the slurry itself, so it runs in itself.
We have to pump that concentrate about 15 kilometres out, and then it's gravity feed all the way down to the northwest coast.
It's not straight by any means. There's lots of nice twists and turns in it. There are some impressive spans over rivers, as you would have seen with the Savage River span and the Arthur River span. Treacherous country. It changes a lot from button grass field to pristine rainforest that we know about in the area.
That means that some of that pipe's buried, some of it's sitting on the ground, but the impact is negligible on the surrounding environment. So a real key feature of our operation.
It's daybreak on Tasmania's northwest coast. The Atalanta has been in port for only 7 hours, but has already taken on a massive 15,000 tonnes of pellets. It's time for another marine pilot to board the ship to oversee another day in these unpredictable waters. If the wind comes from the east, the weather can get rough. Reclaimers begin the final process, shoveling pellets from the stockpiles at a rate of 2,500 tonnes an hour. The pellets then travel via conveyor towards the ship loader.
Well, at the moment, yeah, we're loading up this ship full of the pellets. About to swap over to another hatch over here. Yeah, load the boat 24 hours a day till she's full and take her away. Quite surprising how much they take. Not even sure how much the boat weighs.
The ship loaders evenly pour pellets into the giant hatches of the Atalanta. At the top of the structure is Conrad. He's responsible for maintaining an even weight distribution across the ship.
Called up saying he's about to swap over. So then he'll take the flow of pellets from here. There's just a gate that goes over and send them round to the other one, over the other ship loader. 36 to 15,000.
This ship's taking about 80,000 tonnes. Before the ship arrives, the captain draws up a loading sequence. And that tells us we'll put so many into one hold, maybe 6,000 or 8,000 tonnes, and then we change to another hold, and we sort of load some at the aft of the ship and some at the fore end, and that keeps any bending movement out of the ship and it keeps the ship level, keeps it trimmed at any time. So if the weather was to crack up, we can safely take the ship out without any problems.
The wharf used for loading the ship is an incredible feat of engineering. In order to achieve a depth enough to accommodate a giant bulk carrier offshore, the structure extends a massive 1.6 kilometres out to sea. 2 giant ship-loading arms swing on an arc, filling the ship evenly with 80,000 tonnes of iron ore pellets.
Once the ship becomes loaded and it actually starts to sink, if you like, underneath the water, you need that clearance.
The Atalanta will continue to be loaded for the next 24 hours. It'll then depart Port Latta with 80,000 tonnes of pellets, bound for the industrial revolutionised capital of Asia, China. For the Savage River Mine and Port Latta Pelletizing plant, who knows what the future holds?
I've been with the operation for just on 44 years. In fact, it was the 8th of August 68 that I started. I started as an apprentice with the organisation at Port Latta, and it was quite a few years ago, but I can remember it was 48 cents an hour I started on, and it's been an interesting journey since then.
Focus out, get that back into balance, and then we'll be able to hit that pretty hard through next year. We've got a really great group of people here who are passionate. They love living in this environment. They're part of it, and I think the wilderness is something special. It gets into your blood. You know, you want to be down here. It's the air you breathe. It's the atmosphere and the environment that you're in. A very, very important part of our makeup.
If you consider that for every tonne of ore we take out, we have to deal with anywhere from 8 to 10 tonnes of rock. We're really waste rock managers, not miners.
In the past, there's been a lot of mining legacies, but you're talking about systems that were in place 50, 60 years ago. And of course, people weren't worried about the environment then. You know, we are now. It's sustainable. This place will keep going for years to come.
This mine has a mine life till 2028. There still is a tremendous amount of ore deeper down. So the mine life that we're working on is just another 15 years. But as I say, we could look at other methods of mining later.
The mine at Savage River is sitting right in the middle of the Tarkine, and we work very, very hard on a day-by-day basis to ensure that we minimise any impact on the overall area.
A lot of the activity and disturbance at Savage River, when eventually the mine closes, will ultimately disappear. It will revert to a wilderness much as it was before in many ways.
We try and leave as much untouched as we possibly can. We do have to comply with guidelines on what we do, how we operate, and we have a social responsibility with that as well, and we take that seriously.
There is some fantastic scenery there, and that's how we want to keep the place. We're not about destroying any of that, and we do leave satellite pieces of vegetation as we mine, so we know what the original vegetation looked like, and that's how we'll put it back when we finish.
But we're also all local people, generally the workforce. The 99% of the workforce is local Tasmanians from the northwest coast. We do care about where we work, what we do, and how we do it.
Grange Resources are probably one of the biggest employers of people in Tasmania. Upwards of 600 people, getting towards 700 people directly employed, but there's thousands of contractors that rely on Grange for a bit of work.
Look, I think it's a great thing, honestly. Our economy needs it.
It is the major employer for starters. And you'll find a massive amount of second-hand people work for this company in various areas, Savage or here. You lose this, you've lost everything. Tasmania needs it, and they need more of it. There is no employment, no growth. We need some growth for the kids.
People who last the first week generally stay with us forever, but there's lots of them come down, and well, a lot of them don't even survive the road in. So after people have survived the first winter, generally they'll stay forever. I think they are like me and they fall in love with the place.
For us, we see more than just the extraction of the iron ore, which is doing something for our jobs and our livelihoods, but we're able to do something with the environment here to restore some of the stuff that wasn't done properly last century.
Yeah, it's definitely touched my life, and for the better. I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy that I can do it in Tasmania, that I don't have to go to Western Australia or relocate.
I really can see that I will be staying here basically for the rest of my life. I think it's a great place.
It's a rugged place to be. The hills are steep. Sometimes you can't even stand up. The ground's so slippery and wet, but it's a beautiful place. I love it.